Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Zevachim Kuf Yud Dalet. Back into the sugya of Sheichet Umala B'chutz. On the Mishnah, back on Daf Kuf Yud Beis, we learned that based on the pasuk of Karban LaHashem. So actually, the pasuk reads like this. It begins Ve'el Pesach Oyel Moed. Why didn't he bring this to the Mishkan, to the Beis Hamikdash? Why did he do it outside, right? Ve'el Pesach Oyel Moed Lo Heviu. He failed to bring it where he was supposed to the Oyel Moed. To do what? Lahakriv Karban LaHashem. Lefnei Mishkan Hashem. To offer it as a carbon to Hashem in the right place, in the right setting. Lefnei Mishkan Hashem. So if you recall, in the beginning, the Mishnah focused on the first part of the pasuk. He failed to do it. El Pesach Oyel Moed, which indicates to us that only something which was, suitable, which was ro'oi, which was kosher, as a carbon, which was meant for inside, and then instead was taken outside, he is chayiv. But otherwise, if something is not ro'oi, something is not suitable for the Oyel Moed, it's not destined for the Mishkan, for the Beis Hamikdash. In that case, even if he does it outside, he's not chayiv. That was part A. Then the Mishnah proceeded to the second part of the pasuk, lahakriv karban Hashem lefnei mishkan Hashem. And from that part of the pasuk, we also excluded many items, karbanis which are apostle, faulty, failed, animals, hariveya, vanirba, right? Muktzeh, nevad, mechir, esnan, etc., etc., etc. All these are not roi for the Mishkan Hashem, so they're excluded as well. And the question is, why do we shift to a new part of the pasuk? What's wrong with the first part of the pasuk? You're only chayiv for something which is roi, lavoi, suitable to be delivered al Pesach Oyel Moed. So the Gemara will focus on this point now. An animal which interacted physically with a person or vice versa. These karbanis, who became pasul, are excluded. Meaning, if one takes them and offers them outside, he is patur. But why? Rather than just have them covered by the first part of the pasuk, Vel Pesach Oyel Moed Lo Yiviyah, indicating only something which is roi for Oyel Moed is covered, as opposed to these, we shift over to a new phrase, Lefnei Mishkan Hashem. Only something which is roi for Mishkan Hashem, as opposed to these. The obvious question is, why do we shift? V'ha nami, or v'hani nami. All these examples, nami, typically, they can be derived and excluded from the first part of the pasuk, Pesach Oyel Moed, as opposed to these which are not roi for Oyel Moed. And the answer is like this. You can only exclude from El Pesach Oyel Moed those which were never destined for Oyel Moed. Right? But these examples that we're discussing now are all cases where at one point they were indeed ra'oi, they were fit to be delivered to the Oyel Moed. But then something went amiss. A mishap occurred. A psul landed on them, rendering them pasul, unsuitable, unfit to be delivered and used as a carbon. That's why we require the second pasuk to cover even those which had potential but then lost it and are currently unavailable and unsuitable. These two are not covered. They're excluded from the halacha of sheichet umala b'chutz. Now, how does it play out? I understand that those two cases, mishkachas lei, you can have them sort of land on a carbon which had previously been suitable, in which case it fits our bill and requires the second pasuk, like the shinu mikar. What happened was he first made them carbon, and then they've experienced this qualifying experience. V'hadar rab, right? In which case they become pasal going forward. So you can't exclude them from the first part of the pasuk because they were roi for al Pesach Hayil Moed. But they'll be excluded from the second part, right? Hakriv, Korban, Lashem, Mishkan Hashem, right? Because they're no longer roi as a korban, and therefore he's pater on that. So those two are good. Let's go down the list and see if this can work with all the other examples. How can we have them come on later, once the item had already been kaddish? Ella, but let's say muktzah, v'nevad, the psul which results from being designated for avodah zarah purposes, or actually being nevad, being worshipped. That doesn't work. You can't do that to an existing korban. It's not yours to forbid. It's not your possession to tinker with. It remains unaffected by this type of experience. You can't forbid something. You can't disqualify something which doesn't belong to you. It's a hektish. So how can this have arrived later, after the item had already been designated? The answer is b'kachim kalam. That category of korbanos, like a shlamim, which are somewhat considered owned by its owner, in which case if he turns around and does this to the korban, it becomes possible. We are following Rabbi Yitzchak Lili's opinion, who says, the Amar, who says, Kachim Kalam, Maman Balamu. There's an element of personal ownership to them. The Sani, as we find in the Brisa, Malabal Hashem, Pasuk speaking that he denied his friend's monetary claim and he swore to that effect. The word Bashem tells you, La Rabbis Kachim Kalam Shem Namoni, even if the dispute related to an animal, a korban animal, a shlamim. He denied, he admitted, he swore. It also is included under this umbrella, meaning the halacha is applied. There's a requirement to bring an asham if he admits to having, denied falsely, and etc., etc. Sheinu Mainu. Why? Because it's somewhat his. Divrei, that's the opinion of Rabbi. Okay, so back to our story. It's an existing korban, but it's kachim kalam. It's somewhat mine, and therefore, even if he takes this korban, but then he worships it, etc., it becomes asur, becomes pasal. But again, here's another example of a psul, a disqualifying experience which arrived later. So at one point it was roi for oil moed, and therefore cannot be excluded from the first part of the pasuk. But the psul which arrived later disqualifies it, disables it. It's no longer considered the hakr of korban Hashem, in which case, if it's done outside, he's pater for doing that. Hilkach. Okay, so in summation, says the Gemara, let's go through all these cases and see how and when it works. We start from Revev and Irva, which of course is the simple one, because Dvar Erva, it's an Erva related failure, and that can descend, can affect, can adversely, can disqualify, even a pre-existing korban. So at one point it was kosher, then it became possible. Likewise, muktzah v'nevad, which is avodas kecham, as you just explained, it can be applied to kachim kalam and make it possible. What about esnan, which is where a person takes the animal and gives it to an immoral woman for her services, umechir, or given in exchange for a dog, payment for a dog. Kalaim, a crossbreed, a tzidayfen, born unnaturally, but v'ladis kachim. How do you have these disqualifying labels arrive after the kedusha had already been activated? That's what we're looking for, right? We're on a quest to try to figure out a case where these disqualifying labels were preceded by a qualifying moment. So there was potential, and then it became puzzle. Then it went ori. The only way is bevladis kachim. You had an animal, which is a korban, female, and it was carrying a fetus, an offspring within it. Technically, you can offer both together as a carbon. So there is a moment in time where the fetus has potential to be offered as a carbon. And then, while still in its unborn stage, he offered the offspring as an esnan, mechir, etc., etc. So these disqualifying labels will be applied. Why? Because we're going like the opinion that holds v'ladei kachim b'aviyosin in kedushin. The offspring of a female carbon animal only achieves full-slated, full-fledged, independent kedusha status when it's born. B'aviyosin, when it's born. So that kedusha only arrives at birth. In which case, if he turned it into an esnan prior to birth, the psul esnan applies itself to it and takes effect and renders it unsuitable for carbon use. So here's another example of a carbon which technically had potential. Had he not tinkered with it, not turned it into an esnan, etc., it would have been offered as a carbon together with the mother. Right? The mother and the unborn, offspring go together as a carbon on the mizbeach. So technically, it's roy lepesach oyel moed. But what happened was, he made it possible through turning it into an esnan, mechir, etc. Or if it's a kalayim, was created by a sort of crossbreed experience. Or Yetzidayfin was born by cesarean. These are disqualifying experiences, which renders this newborn as unsuitable. But the only way to exclude it from the Isser of Sheikhah Damal Bachutz is by employing the second part of the pasuk, Lahakriv Karban. Allah Hashem, because again we're speaking that it was suitable at an early stage, and then became unsuitable. And now we need the second part of the pasuk to exclude it, because currently speaking, it's not suitable. Okay, so again we have a long list of psulim which are excluded based on lahakriv karban Hashem Pesach. Lifnei Mishkan Hashem. And the reason why we need to source it in this part of the pasuk, not in the first part, because the first part is speaking something which was unsuitable ever unsuitable. It was always possible from day one, never right. But in these cases where there was an element of suitability at an early point in its experience, so now we need a special pasuk to say, look, if it's currently unsuitable, it's not covered, and even if it's done outside, he's pater. Now the Mishnah proceeded to present an interesting machlokes. Shimon, who says that when you have something which is going to be ro'i in the future, although currently it's not, and if that's taken outside, there's no kares, no full-fledged, full brunt of the Isser, but there is a loy saseh. Chacham disagree, and they say he's pater because, look, in its current situation, it's not ro'i for a carbon. And the Mishnah brings no less than 3 examples. And the question is, why do we need all 3 examples to just, to present this halacha? One example is Oisev es benai. So, this is an offspring whose mother had been shechted that day, in which case you have to wait until tomorrow. So it's currently called mechusar zman. It's still too early, so to speak, to wait it out. Let more time pass. So in this case, if the carbon is taken outside in this early, premature state, according to Rav Shimon, there's a loy saseh, according to Rabban, it's pater. Another example was the bird, the teirin, which are only suitable once they mature, but now they're still early in the game, they're still too young. So it's another example of something too early. And thirdly, we have the case of bali mumin, right? Blemished animals, which are going to heal soon. It's going to recover. So again, it's called mechusar zman. It's still too early to be used as a carbon, but will become fit later on. Again, the same machlek. The question is, why do we need all three cases? Bali Mumin, and the Teirin, and the Oisves Benoi, to bring out, this machlek. Bali Mumin, V'chulu, Oisves Benoi, V'chulu, Tzrichi, all three are needed. Itana Bali Mumin, had we only discussed the case of the blemished animals, I would say the reason why, in this case, the Chachamim say, it's potter if you did it outside, because they're disgusting, there's a mum, it's totally unfit. But these young birds, there's nothing unsightly about them. Perhaps the Rabbanan will agree to Reb Shimon that there's a love for doing it outside. The Moedule, the Reb Shimon. On the other hand, parshanut-torah-comment, had we only discussed the second case, I would say, here Reb Shimon says there's a loisaseh because, they were unfit. They're not yet fit. It's not like they were fit and became unfit and became rejected. They didn't become fit and then rejected. So they're sort of closer to suitability than not. But in the case of the blemished animals, which were okay, and then became disqualified, maybe that's worse off. That's so disqualifying that even Reb Shimon would agree there's no Isser. The Irsu, they were roy, they were fit, and then became rejected. In this case, I agree to you. It's totally, off the track. And he's potter if he does it outside. Okay, that's why we mentioned both cases. What about the third case? And we only discussed these two. The Psul, the Gufay would say, over here the Chacham say it's potter because there's something inherently wrong with it. It has a mum, it's too young. But in the case of the mother and the offspring animals, where the issue is unrelated to the actual animal in front of you, it's just because of the timing. The mother was done on the same day, so you have to wait it out. The Psul ma'al makasila, it's sort of an external factor that's causing this hold up. Eima, moidu, le Rabbanon, Reb Shimon, perhaps Rabbanon will get to Reb Shimon that he's so close to home, he's more or less suitable, in which case if it's done outside, at least there's a lav tzricha. That's why we have all three cases. And all three, the same two opinions. Reb Shimon says something which is mechusar zman, something which is, although currently not suitable as a carbon, but will in the future turn into a proper carbon. There's a lav. Rabbanan say they're pot. Now, where's Reb Shimon's source? Then, in fact, there's a loisaseh and there's a malchus for taking something outside instead of inside. And we're speaking that although it's puzzle right now, but since it has potential, it will become kosher in the future. Reb Shimon Omer might tell me that Reb Shimon, what's his reason? What's the source for this? Right? Because you would think, based on the previous discussion, right? It has to be suitable currently, now. In the now, not in the future. Pasuk for this. Moshe Rabbeinu was addressing Klal Yisrael on the way into Eretz Yisrael. He says, look, until now, it was one system, and later on, you're going to switch systems in terms of karbanos. Right? Today we have the Mishkan, and Mishkan only. You can't have your own private bama, your private altar. And since we have the luxury of the Mishkan, we can bring any carbon, donations, obligatory karbanos, right? Neder, nadav, chayv, anything. Open door policy. But once you get into Eretz Yisrael, and we know that the first 14 years are going to be busy capturing, conquering, dividing. At that point, you'll have the ability to make your own private bama, but be careful. To only service personal donations. You can't be makrib, chayvos, obligatory karbanos. Anyway, even in the public bama that was in Gilgal, time out. You have to wait until the next stage, which is going to be Mishkan Shiloi, 14 years later. And then things will become, more formal, more official, and then you'll bring all your karbanos. So Moshe Rabbeinu is sort of warning them, listen, achatas and asham, anything that you want to be makriv during the first 14 cannot be offered then. You have to wait until Shiloi. Don't do it now, do it later. Here's another example of something which is mechusar zman. It's premature. It's early in the process. It's exactly what we're talking about in Reb Shimon's cases. Early, mechusar zman, premature, something which has potential in the future. There's a loisa say, a warning, don't do it. So we see that all these carry a loisa say. Okay? Don't do everything we're doing here today. What does that mean? Here in the midbar, you're free to do anything. Any carbon, chatas, asham, right? But not then. Moshe tells Klal Yisrael, when you enter Yisrael, the first 14 years, Yesharis takrivu, you can only be makriv Yesharis. Yesharis means ishkal yasha be'enav, right? Something which you see fit, something you decide to donate. Right? Neder, nadava, promises, donations. Chayvis like takrivu, but not obligatory karbanis, not chiyuvim like chatas, asham. Those you have to wait till you get to Shiloi, the Gilgal. Now, the Gilgal stage, the first 14 years, where the big bama was in Gilgal, that we're talking about. Legabe Shiloi, with respect to Shiloi, which was 14 years later, right? Until Shiloi was established, was 14 years. And at that point, Mechusas Manu was still early in the game. It's premature. It's undeveloped, so to speak. Right? So all these karbanas have to wait. Mechusas Manu. And what's the penalty for doing it outside, for doing it now? Moshe tells him, Loisas, don't do it. So that's in effect a lois, I say, against taking something which is a carbon that has potential to be offered properly in the future, i.e. in Mishkan Shiloi. And there's a lois, I say, against doing it now, in the wrong place. That's Reb Shimon's source. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Reb Zera. So Rabbi Yirmiyah turns to Reb Zera. If that's the case, that the karbana is chayva, the obligatory karbana is during the Gilgal's phase. So Yechatas and Asham, etc., that was present during the Gilgal phase. That's considered mechusar zman, lacking in time, meaning premature, undeveloped, with respect to the eventual Shiloi setup. Milki nami loki. Milki nami loki. So if that's the case, any mechusar zman, forget about, if it's done in the Mikdash or out of the Mikdash, you have a carbon which is considered mechusar zman. Mechusar zman can come in many forms. The animal's too young, right? Not meant to be makar before, the 8th day. The animal's 5 days old. That's a form of mechusar zman. The owner is still tameh, you can't bring it yet. That's mechusar zman on account of the owner. You have the Torah, which is still undeveloped, all different variations and different types of mechusar zmans. So, suppose he takes a mechusar zman and does it in the Beis HaMikdash. So let's shift for a moment. Instead of speaking about shchutei chutz, which is the topic of our sugya, suppose he has a regular mechusar zman in the Mikdash. Is he going to get malchus for doing so? Well, based on what you're saying, the answer should be yes, because the aforementioned pasuk, Moshe Rabbeinu's warning, seems to be directed at any mechusar zman carbon. Milkan ami loki. Allah ma Rav Zera. But Reb Zera told us otherwise. Hakasav nitkala say. Now the pasuk which speaks about, don't makar a carbon before 7 days, before 8 days of its birth, says, well, on the 8th day you should do it. That's called nitkala say. Don't do it, but make sure to do it right. So basically, the pasuk is saying, you don't really get a malchus on that. It's not a direct lav, it's just an inferred lav. Do it then, but don't do it now. In any case, there's no lav based on that pasuk for every mechusar zman. But we have a new source for mechusar zman: the warning against being makar bechatas during the time of Gilgal, because of its mechusar zman status, and it's a straight out lav. It should be malchus as a result. Answers the Gemara, you're right, 100% right. According to Reb Shimon, who applies the aforementioned pasuk in this manner, you're right, it would generate malchus for any mechusar zman. Hani milil rabbanon. When Reb Zera says there's no malchus, right, it doesn't get the lashes because it's not an outright negative commandment. Rabbanon, that's only according to Shitas Rabbanon. But you're right, Reb Shimon achinam, according to Reb Shimon, you're right. Every mechusar zman generates a punishment, a proper malchus, because an outright explicit leisase. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar says, no. The aforementioned pasuk describing Moshe Rabbeinu's warning does not pertain to a classic case of Mechusas Zman brought in the Beis HaMikdash. To the contrary, we're speaking about Mechusas Zman outside the Mishkan or the Mikdash. Because even Pnim the Gilgal, even if you should choose to bring the Chatas inside to the Mishkan Gilgal over there, right? To the Bama and Gilgal. Although it appears like you're in the right place, you're inside, so to speak. But technically, since it wasn't the appropriate venue for these types of Karbanis, Legabi Shiloh, so with respect to Shiloh, which was a well-established Mishkan, coming in 14 years, Kechutz Dami, this current arrangement in Gilgal is like, it's like outside, it's like outdoors. It's like Shutei Chutz, Kechutz Dami, because it doesn't belong there. Right? So it's more than just a simple Mechusas Zman, which is a sort of a lower level Isser. You're not going to recover in the Beis HaMikdash too early. Okay, it's a lav, but it's only a third lav. There's no malchus. What to speak about is something which is way worse, much more severe violation. It's Mechusas Zman outside, although it's in Gilgal, but it's not the proper venue. It's like it's outside. Chuzdami. So of course here there's malchus. It's a very different case. Rabba Amar. I have another source for Reb Shimon, that if one is makar of a carbon outside, but the carbon is not yet suitable for inside, it's Mechusas Zman. Not now, but will be suitable in the future, there's a lav. Time that Reb Shimon's reason is based on the following price. Because this time, Reb Shimon Eimer, what about a person takes a carbon Pesach to a private bama, Mishas Isra Bamas, when that's not appropriate, when the bamas are asu. Now Rashi says, we're thinking at this point, when were bamas asur? During one of three points in history, right? Either in the desert, when you had a proper mishkan, you couldn't do your private thing. Or in Shiloh, when it was also a private, mishkan, a proper mishkan, you couldn't do your private thing, your private bama. And certainly Beis HaLamim, when you're in the Beis HaMikdash, when once the Beis HaMikdash was established. So during one of these three periods, private bamas were off limit. And if he takes a Korban Pesach and does it in his private backyard, bamas yachad, when it was forbidden, Shas Yisra bamas. Shubbalei says, how do we know that it's forbidden? Tamalema lo suchel es b'echas Pesach. You're not allowed to do it. Yochalaf b'shas eter bamas kin. What about when bamas were allowed? Tamalema b'echad sharech. The prohibition only applies be'echad sharech. What does that mean? When there is a well-established place for karbanos. I'm only telling you this Isser el b'shah shekol Yisrael. Only at a time when the entire nation nichnasen b'shar echad are entering one gateway, meaning there's a focal point for avodah, there's a mishkan, there's a Beis HaMikdash. At that point, you take it privately, you're in violation. End quote. Now, this Korban Pesach was shechted when? Before midday on Erev Pesach or after midday? What are we talking about? Emas. We're speaking after Chatzos, which is the appropriate time for bringing a Korban Pesach. Why are we stopping at just a prohibition, a negative prohibition, a lav? It's way more severe, way more consequential. He took a proper Korban, a Korban Pesach, did it in the wrong place, in its right time, but in the wrong place. That's kares, that's shchutei chutz. That's what we're talking about. Apparently we're speaking that he did it prematurely, before Chatzos, not yet the time for the Korban Pesach. There you go. Mechusas Zman, b'chutz, is a lav. That's Reb Shimon's source. No. Says the Gemara, certainly we could be speaking that it's already afternoon. Actually, we're not speaking during the Mishkan and during Shiloh, we're speaking when the bamas were permitted. For instance, during the other times in history, the 14 years in Gilgal, later on Neiva Givain, when one was allowed to be makar b'karban in his private bama. But regarding obligatory karbanos, no, you can't do that. Right, because a private venue is only appropriate for right, the heter abamis is only mutter for, like we said before, for donations, for neder and adava, not for chayvos, not for obligatory karbanos. Okay, so this Pesach belongs in the Bama G'dayla, the public Bama, not in a private Bama. So that's why it's Asr. Totally different halacha. We're not talking about Mechusas Zman, right? Ask the Gemara, what do you mean? But the wording in the Brisa is inconsistent with what you're saying. But look at the Brisa. It says, B'shas Isra Bamis Ka'amar. Clearly we're speaking when the Bamis were off limits. You're telling me that it's in a time of Heter Bamis. Yeah, it just means it's at a time when you can build your own Bama. But you're meant to only use it for donations, for voluntary karbanis, and not something like a Karban Pesach. The answer is Isra Bama Loi. There's an Issa to do Loi, to do this type of carbon in the Bama. But regarding a different carbon, like an oila, a shlamim, which are voluntary carbonis, it's perfectly permissible to put them on your Bama. Okay, so in any case, we thought this Bryce was speaking about our subject matter, a carbon which is not yet suitable, it's Mechusas Zman, he's doing it outside, there's a lav. No, we're speaking that it's a proper carbon Pesach. Problem is, wrong venue. Instead of going to the public Bama and doing it properly, he did it in his backyard. That's the problem. And on that, there's a lot. Okay, in any case, Rav Shimon and Rabban have this disagreement regarding karbanos, which will be ra'ui in the future, but not now. And he does it outside the Beis Hamikdash. What happens? There's no kares. According to Rav Shimon, there's a lab. According to Rabban, he's potter. We have many examples. We found a couple of sources for Rav Shimon. Mechusas Zman. What's an example of Mechusas Zman? On account of the owner not yet being available. So Mishnah says like this. You have over here in Kufir Beis on the base. Around 10 lines from the bottom. The Mishnah gives us examples where the owner is not yet ready for it. He's still tameh, he's not yet ready. Hazav, Yeledes, Vamatzura, right? So they took their chatars, their asham, and did it outside. They're potter because it's not yet time for these karbanos. But they took an oila or a shlamim of theirs and did it outside. So although it doesn't count in terms of what they needed to bring for their purification process, but it's still a proper carbon because they can bring it as a donation. These can be brought as a neder and a dava. So they're technically suitable in the moment now. Hence, if taken outside, there's a chiyuv, a full-fledged chiyuv and consequence of carbons. So now the Gemara is going to deal with some like a technical thing here. So all these fellows that we discussed, are they connected to an asham? Only some of them, right? Only in some cases do we have asham. It doesn't seem like these people have ashams. You have to add mitzvah to the list, and he in fact brings an asham. So they bring their oil and a shlamim outside. They're chayiv. Since one of these fellows is going to bring shlamim, it's not on their repertoire. On Rav Sheshes, we have to add another individual Tani Nazir. But we add Nazir to the list, and he in fact brings their shlamim. Now in the Mishnah we only have mitzvah added, but we don't have the Nazir. So how did that happen? The Zeiri Kavod Tanoi. The Tanoim happened to insert Zeiri's add-on, so they added Mitzvah to the list as appropriate. The Rav Sheshes, however, Rav Sheshes add-on, which was the Nazir, for some reason was left out and had to be elaborated on today and added today. Like what Tanoi did not add him in. Omar Rav Chilkiah Bar Tuva. Here comes an interesting halach. Loishonol Lishmoi. So this goes to the let's say the case of the asham that the Mitzvah did. Too early, right? He's not yet ready for it. He does it outside his pot. That's only if it was done to Shmoi with the asham in mind. Okay, he's not suitable for asham. Too early in the game. He's not yet ready for it, right? El lo lishmoi. Avol shlo lishmoi. Chayav. But suppose when they shechted the asham, he said, no, this is an oila. and did it outside the Beis Hamikdash, his chayiv kares. Why? Because although it's not suitable as an asham, but it's suitable as an oila, because if you take the asham and shecht it as an oila, it's kosher. The fact that it's kosher. So therefore, if it's done outside with this in mind, it's considered a suitable, potentially suitable oila inside. So if it's done outside, you're chayiv. Since in its shaloi lishmai format, it would be accepted inside, right? Likewise, if it's done outside in this format, he's chayiv. Ask the Gemara Yachi, if that's the case, if you're drawing this sort of parallel, lishmai nami l'chayiv, even if he does it for an asham, he does the asham inside for the sake of asham, he should also be chayiv. Sorry, if he does the asham outside, having asham in mind, although he's not yet ready for the asham, the chayiv should be chayiv. Why? Because technically this animal can serve as a proper korban. How? Because technically you can take it inside and have in mind, so now that it's done outside, it's taking a proper korban outside. So again, even though he's thinking asham, it shouldn't really, it's irrelevant. The fact is this animal is roy as an oila inside. The answer is no. Boyakira. In order for the asham to be kosher as an oila in the Beis Hamikdash, he has to uproot, he has to relabel it, and say to himself, no, this is not an asham, I'm doing it as an oila. And until that's done, it doesn't automatically revert to oila, it stays asham. And since he's not yet ready for the asham, it can be used as an asham. So likewise, if it's done outside for the sake of asham, he's potter. Unless he consciously switches it to an oila outside, then he's chayiv, because as an oila, it could be brought inside. Okay, Maskala Rav Huna. Rav Huna has a question on this. He says, how could you say such a? How could you say v'chiyesh lecha davar she'eina kosher l'shmoi v'kosher shelo l'shmoi? How could you say that you have a case here that's something which, if it's done properly, so to speak, with the right korban in mind, right? If he's thinking asham, which it really is, then it's not kosher, because it's not suitable at this point. It's too early. It's not ready for the asham. V'kosher shelo l'shmoi. But if he'll relabel it and divert it to something which it really isn't, it's not really an oila. If he has an oila in mind that it's kosher, how could that be? Properly, it's pasul. Improperly, it's kosher. Says the more v'loy. It's the first time we encountered such a thing. Very Pesach. Take a look at korban Pesach. Throughout the year, not on erev Pesach. Deina kosher l'shmoi. If you have in mind korban Pesach, boom, it's pasul. Wrong time. But v'kosher shelo l'shmoi, if he has in mind, a shlamim, if he has in mind a different korban, it's okay. It turns into a shlamim. So there's your example. Well, says the more you can't compare Pesach, because the korban Pesach throughout the year, shlamim ninu, in fact, is a shlamim to begin with. Meaning every korban Pesach has a potential to be either a korban Pesach, or if it's done throughout the year, it's a shlamim. That's the halach. So it's very different than our case, where you're taking an asham, which is an asham through and through, and sort of saying, look, if I have asham in mind, it's possible. If I have oil in mind, then it's kosher. That's a little bit of a striking type of case, and that was his kasha. In any case, we'll continue tomorrow. But the point of the matter was, the chiddush of Chilki Bar Tuvi was that although the asham is not yet, the owner, the mitzvah is not yet ready for his asham, and therefore if the asham is taken outside and shechted, is potter. But if it's shechted for the sake of an oila, shechted for the sake of, then he's chayav. Why? Because if you were to have that in mind inside, it would be kosher. You can't be shechting the asham for the sake of the asham. It's too early for that. But asham for the sake of an oila would be kosher. Likewise, if it's outside with that in mind, then it's considered to be makar with proper korban outside, and there's a regular einish of course. Very interesting. All the best to you, and atzlach.